The stagecoach reached Cinder Wash just after noon. Abelard Vin stood beside the depot expecting a frightened woman with little more than a carpetbag and a reason to be grateful. Instead, Tomo Akiyama stepped down with perfect composure. She wore a refined traveling kimono beneath a practical Western cloak, her dark hair pinned neatly, her expression calm despite the dust and heat. A single trunk followed her. That was all. Abelard removed his hat. Mrs. Akiyama? Tomo is fine. I'm Abelard Vin. I know. Her English was fluent. That surprised him more than it should have. He reached for her trunk. She stopped him politely. I can manage it. I wasn't suggesting you couldn't. Good. A faint smile touched her face. Respect, Abelard realized, might be more difficult than politeness. The ride to Vin Orchard Ranch took nearly an hour. Abelard explained the arrangement plainly. You'll have your own room. You'll have access to the household accounts. If either of us decides this marriage is unsuitable before the ceremony, we end it without embarrassment. Tomo looked toward the distant orchards. That is unusually reasonable. I've learned unreasonable promises become expensive. She almost laughed. Then perhaps we will understand each other. At the ranch, Odelia Vin waited on the porch with crossed arms. She studied Tomo from head to toe. So this is the bride. Tomo bowed her head respectfully. And you must be the aunt who warned Mr. Vin not to marry a stranger. Odelia blinked. Abelard coughed to hide his amusement. I like her already, Odelia muttered. That evening, Tomo opened her trunk. Most of its contents were modest. Folded clothing, books, family papers. Then she removed a long object wrapped in silk. Abelard stopped speaking. Tomo placed it carefully on the parlor table and uncovered a magnificent sheathed katana. The scabbard was dark lacquer with gold detailing. Ornate fittings carried a repeating family crest. Odelia stared. Good heavens. Abelard looked from the heirloom to Tomo's worn travel cloak. You said you were poor. Tomo met his eyes without offense. I said I had little money. She rested one hand lightly beside the sword. That is not the same thing. The words landed harder than he expected. This belonged to my grandfather, she continued. Then my father. You could sell it. I could also sell my name. Silence. I intend to do neither. Inside the storage case were old receipts and correspondence. Abelard barely paid attention until Tomo unfolded one brittle document. A familiar crest appeared beside the signature. His face changed. I've seen that mark. Where? In my father's estate papers. The following morning, Abelard brought out the disputed estate file. For 3 years, his cousin Bramwell Kane had claimed part of Vin Orchard Ranch through an incomplete inheritance record. One page contained handwriting no attorney in Cinder Wash had been able to identify. Tomo studied it, then looked up. This is Japanese commercial notation. Abelard leaned closer. What does it say? She translated slowly. Waterworks, investment, shared obligation, family guarantee. Odelia sat straighter. Shared with whom? Tomo opened another packet from her trunk. My family. Abelard stared at her. Your father knew mine? Apparently better than either of us knew. She unfolded one more page. Her expression changed. Mr. Vin. What? Your father owed mine a debt. Abelard's jaw tightened. How much? Tomo looked directly at him. Not money. They spent the entire day reading. The correspondence revealed that decades earlier, Abelard's father had helped Tomo's family during a devastating commercial loss in San Francisco. Years later, Tomo's father repaid the kindness by helping finance irrigation channels across Vin land. No cash repayment was expected. Instead, both families agreed to preserve records proving the other's contribution. The Katana's family crest authenticated Tomo's documents. Abelard slowly set down one letter. So part of this ranch exists because of your family. Yes. And Bramwell's claim ignores that. Yes. He leaned back. I spent years thinking this was only a Vin inheritance. Tomo smiled faintly. History is rarely so tidy. He looked toward the sheathed katana. So that was the reason your father told you never to sell it. Partly. What was the rest? She touched the silk covering gently. Some things survive because someone decides money isn't the highest measure of value. Abelard said nothing. For the second time since meeting her, he realized she was teaching him something he should have understood long ago. Over the next several days, Tomo began helping Milo Ferret sort the ranch accounts. Not because Abelard demanded it. Because disorder annoyed her. Milo watched in amazement as she identified duplicate parcel descriptions and mismatched irrigation references. How did you find that? Tomo pointed toward 2 entries. Same land, different names. Milo frowned. Those were filed 15 years apart. Paper ages. Logic does not. Abelard overheard from the doorway. Later, he found Tomo walking through the pear orchard at sunset. You've done more in 4 days than my lawyers managed in 3 years. Your lawyers were looking for legal answers. And you? I was looking for patterns. They continued walking. For the first time, conversation between them felt easy. Not romantic. Not yet. But comfortable. He asked about San Francisco. She asked about irrigation. He explained cattle rotations. She explained import ledgers. Neither noticed how long they had been walking until the lanterns inside the ranch house came into view. Tomo stopped. You expected someone helpless, didn't you? Abelard hesitated. Yes. Her eyebrow lifted. That honest. You said respect was a better beginning than promises. She considered that. Fair. He looked toward her. I was wrong. Tomo smiled. Good. About what? About thinking that admitting it would kill you. For the first time in years, Abelard laughed loudly enough for someone inside the house to hear. And somewhere between the orchard rose and the fading Oregon light, the practical marriage began becoming something far more dangerous. Mutual admiration. Bramwell Kane arrived at Van Orchard Ranch wearing the expression of a man who still believed he controlled the board. He accepted coffee from Odelia, declined food, then looked directly at Tomo. I understand you've discovered some convenient documents. Tomo remained seated. I discovered nothing. My family preserved them. Foreign papers produced by the woman preparing to marry the man who benefits from them. Abelard's chair scraped backward. Tomo touched his wrist. Please. One word stopped him. She turned to Bramwell. You question their authenticity? Naturally. Good. That answer unsettled him. Tomo continued. Then we should have them independently authenticated. 3 days later, Haruki Senda arrived from Portland. He examined seals, handwriting, commercial terminology, shipping dates, and the Akiyama crest. His conclusion was unequivocal. The papers were genuine. Worse for Bramwell, shipping records independently confirmed transactions between both families. Tomo watched his face change. Until then, Bramwell had considered her Abelard's weakness. Now he understood. She might be the reason he lost everything. The county hearing drew half of Cinder Wash. Bramwell arrived with 2 attorneys. Abelard arrived with Tomo. When the clerk indicated a chair behind him, Tomo ignored it and sat beside her future husband. Bramwell's attorney attempted to turn her heritage into uncertainty. Tomo gave him nothing emotional to attack. Can you prove this mark belongs to your family? Yes. How? She produced correspondence carrying the same crest across 37 years. Can you establish the irrigation payment? She presented shipping accounts. Can you establish that these references concern Venn property? Tomo calmly opened an irrigation map. Channel 3 follows this boundary. The measurements correspond exactly. Milo confirmed the ranch records. Haruki authenticated the commercial language. Then the judge found the missing easement. Bramwell's strongest claim collapsed. The corrected record established that the disputed irrigation works had been created through contributions from both families. Outside the courthouse, Abelard stood speechless. Tomo glanced at him. You seem disappointed. I just won. Then your face should be informed. He laughed. For the first time, she took his arm without thinking. Neither mentioned it. Neither let go. That evening they walked through the orchard. Abelard was unusually quiet. Finally he stopped. I owe you an apology. For what? When your first letter arrived, I thought you needed rescuing. Tomo's expression remained gentle. I didn't need somewhere to go. That's not what I mean. I know. He looked embarrassed. I saw that you had lost your husband, your business, and most of your money. I assumed that meant you had nothing. Tomo considered him. Having nowhere else to go does not mean having nothing. I understand that now. Do you? I married expecting to provide everything. His eyes met hers. Instead, you arrived carrying part of my family's history. Tomo smiled. And a considerable amount of paperwork. Terrifying amounts. She laughed. Then Abelard did something more meaningful than apologizing. He asked, what do you want this marriage to become? Not what she could do for his ranch. Not what he could provide her. What she wanted. Tomo looked toward the orchard. Something neither of us has to pretend about. So do I. That was their first true promise. Weeks later, Tomo wrapped the katana in silk. Abelard found her preparing its storage case. You're putting it away? It has finished its work. We could display it. Tomo shook her head. It isn't decoration. He immediately understood. Instead, Abelard converted a dry interior room into an archive. Shelves held the Vin estate papers beside Akiyama correspondence. Irrigation plans rested beside shipping records. The katana remained protected inside its case. Two families' histories occupied the same room, without one swallowing the other. Then Abelard brought Tomo a weathered leather journal. My mother's. Tomo didn't immediately take it. Are you certain? She documented every orchard planting from the first pear trees onward. This belongs to your family. Abelard smiled. Tomo. She understood. Your family. Not guest. Not indebted bride. Family. She accepted the journal with both hands. That evening, beneath the orchard trees, Abelard kissed her for the first time. No audience. No grand declaration. Just two adults who had finally stopped treating their marriage as an arrangement waiting to begin. 1 year later, Vin Orchard Ranch was exporting fruit farther than Abelard had ever imagined. Tomo handled commercial correspondence while Milo managed daily accounts. Abelard expanded irrigation without threatening the older channels whose history they had fought to preserve. Their marriage had changed too. There was laughter at breakfast now, arguments over bookkeeping, quiet evenings reading beside one another. And Odelia regularly complained that married happiness had made Abelard unbearably cheerful. One autumn afternoon, a visiting merchant noticed the silk-lined katana case, while Abelard showed him the archive. Extraordinary, the man said. Is that what made your wife valuable? Abelard stopped. Across the room, Tomo was reviewing an export letter. No. The visitor looked confused. Abelard smiled. That was simply the first thing that made me realize how little I understood. Tomo looked up. And you still understand very little. The merchant seemed horrified. Abelard laughed. Apparently enough to keep improving. Later, they walked through the orchard together. Workers closed the irrigation gates as evening settled across Cinder Wash. A year earlier, Abelard had expected a poor bride. A woman arriving with one trunk. Someone who would enter the security he'd already built. Instead, Tomo brought a history his family had forgotten, knowledge his ranch desperately needed, and a definition of wealth he had never considered. The golden katana remained locked safely inside the house. Not as a trophy, not as proof of riches, but as the heirloom that had carried one family's memory across an ocean until it reached the family that needed to remember it. Abelard reached for Tomo's hand. She intertwined her fingers with his. The gold had caught his attention. The woman carrying it had changed his life.